Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie, together for 8 years with a 5-year-old son, suspects his wife's infidelity, confirmed when she reveals her pregnancy is from another man. Despite agreeing to terminate the pregnancy and seek counseling, she changes her mind, prompting the husband to consider divorce. The wife's erratic behavior, including asking him to kill their son, adds to the turmoil. Financial constraints and concerns about custody complications in California contribute to his distress, leaving him emotionally overwhelmed and seeking solace in his relationship with his son. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I have a 5-year-old boy. My son is my favorite person in the world. We've been married for 8 years but have known each other for 25 years, dating for 3 years prior to marriage. I know the baby isn't mine. We have not had intimate in a while. She would make up an excuse or push me away for whatever reason she had at the time. And many of those reasons were believable. I had my suspicions for a while. She slept with a good friend of ours who, as of a few weeks ago, is no longer our friend. I never did get a good answer as to why until 2 days ago. She doesn't work and is a stay-at-home mom. I work a lot and pay all of the bills. We own our home outright. 2 nights ago, she dropped this bombshell on me when I got home from work. She was crying and calling herself a bad person, etc. Then she said she was sorry for hurting my feelings. As opposed to sorry, not cheated. She said she has not told anyone, not even our friend the father, only her sister. We made an agreement that she would terminate the pregnancy and go to counseling. I was awash with emotions I have never felt before. But I thought to myself, maybe this could be a new beginning for us. To preface the next paragraph, I've always wanted a second child. According to her, her doctor told her she could not have any more kids. I was not at that appointment and trusted what my wife told me. I had no reason to not trust her at this point. This was 2 years ago. I know now that this was BS. I've also been tested and I was fertile. Last night she came to me with a knife and asked me to kill our son, because that is what I was asking her to do. She then tried to blame me for her infidelity, which I know is BS. She then started calling her pregnancy a miracle. This was an entire world of crazy from her that I have never seen before. Maybe I was just naive. She wants to keep the baby now, and I told her I want a divorce. I am very uncomfortable with the thought I won't be able to read bedtime stories my son every night now and do the things we do every day together. And I'm not comfortable with my wife meeting someone new and my son calling him daddy because we are in California. I know I am screwed when it comes to divorce and child custody, and that isn't helping things. I cannot afford a lawyer, let alone a good one. I have done nothing wrong here. I've been telling myself that since D-Day. I get to go home and deal with this mess in a few hours. I don't want to see her or talk to her. I just want to see my son. I'm sorry if this seems all jumbled up, but I can't really think straight right now. Today's second story. In this story, Opie discovers his wife's cheating when a coworker reveals her involvement in an office romance. Despite her denial, evidence surfaces, leading to a confrontation. He decides to divorce, gaining support from unexpected quarters. His wife's subsequent erratic behavior, refusal to sign divorce papers, and destructive actions push him to end the marriage. Months later, she reaches out in remorse, but he advises her to reflect and change. He ultimately moves on, finding solace in single life. Now let's get into the story. One day, while my wife was at work, something happened that made her see one of her coworkers in a different, more romantic light. I didn't know it when it happened. I only noticed that she was really giggly and happy when she came home from work. I thought she was pleased with her new position and pay. She wouldn't tell me about anyone she met at work. She worked there for an entire year and never told me about anybody. She did mention that it was the first time she attended a fire drill and it felt real. That was not very interesting, but I pretended it was and asked her more questions. She was just vague about the rest, but she started to blush. So I took this as a chance to ask her why she never told me about work. She was surprised I asked and seemed offended for some reason. She said she didn't think she had to report everything to me. That was a red flag. I told her she didn't, but I think she'd want me to be involved with her work life, at least by her telling me things she liked or didn't like. I mentioned how she knew all the guys I worked with at the garage because she came by often for lunch. My wife allowed me little room for privacy and even checked my phone often. I didn't care. I had nothing to hide, but she never asked if I wanted to look at her phone. When I became suspicious that she was hiding something at work, I asked her if I could look at her phone. She told me she left it at work and left immediately, despite my objection. While she was gone, I looked on her Facebook and searched for her friends. There were only 3 girls that worked with her. I decided to message one, begging her not to tell my wife anything. I needed to know if there was anything romantic going on between my wife and someone in the office. She replied in a most shocking way. She was apologetic and said she didn't know my wife was married. She saw that during a fire drill at their office, a man that spoke daily to my wife played a romantic rescuer and swept her off her feet to carry her down 4 flights of stairs after her high heel broke. I expressed my shock to this woman and literally physically felt my heart breaking. I didn't want to believe it, but I didn't think she'd lied to me. I asked her how often the super guy spoke to my wife. She reaffirmed daily. I felt terrible because this guy sounded heroic and desirable. This was probably why my wife had been so giggly and didn't want to let me look at her phone. She didn't get home until really late, and she smelled different. She acted guilty and distant, even though she was willing to hand me her phone because she had all that time to delete whatever she wanted. She asked for my phone, and even though I was heavily considering divorce, I didn't care. I let her look, and she got mad at me for the conversation with the woman at her job. She added that her coworker was lying, but I think that was because she felt she had to say that. I told her I didn't believe a word she said and pointed out that she smelled like another man. Of course, she said it was because she went at her dad's house for a while, but I didn't believe her because of how odd her behavior was. Just then my phone rang. My wife handed it to me slowly, probably wondering if she should let me answer it. It was someone I worked with at the garage. He said he knew his call was really unexpected because we never spoke before, but he wanted to tell me something he felt I needed to know. I pleaded with him to continue on speakerphone. My wife looked extremely on edge, like she just knew it was going to be about her. He said he had a roommate that worked at a company that my wife also worked at. He said the guy had been talking about a girl he started an office romance with, but he didn't realize it was my wife until tonight. When she came over and went upstairs for 3 hours, my wife started yelling that it was bull. Even before he finished his sentence, she swore up and down it wasn't her, and my coworker actually yelled back at her that it was and called her some really despicable things. I was blown away yet again. This was a terrible night. I asked him if I could, and he welcomed me. He said he would kick out his roommate immediately for what he did. My wife was disturbed to hear that her AP just lost his place to live. On top of it, she took off her wedding rings and stared at the absent mark on her finger. She was about to boil over and the most upset I had ever seen her. She started screaming, shoving stuff off shelves in the kitchen counters. A ton of stuff broke by left. I didn't give a crap, and I didn't want her to turn on me. The more of a mess it was, the more likely she wouldn't bring AP over. I had some man-to-man time and made an unexpected friend in my coworker. We only talked for the first few minutes about what my wife did, then we changed to distracting and entertaining topics for my sanity. By the morning, I had decided to divorce. This was something I never expected my wife to do, and I needed to place my trust in someone else. She wasn't even apologetic. Her behavior was rampant, and she destroyed things in her craziness. When I gave her the papers, she acted like she didn't care, but also said she wouldn't sign them. I waited 2 months, and she actually returned them to me at work, probably so she could embarrass me or find another man's attention or something. I didn't believe her intentions were innocent. AP hadn't been back to work, probably because he had no choice but to move far away. I guess my wife had to clean up her mess at the house all on her own. It was 4 months after that my wife called me, sobbing. She said she hadn't been with anyone and was struggling to forgive herself or feel worthy. I wasn't sure what to say because she certainly broke my heart and acted like a fool. I simply told her she needed to improve who she was. She needed to stop behaving like an entitled, angry girl and treat the man she wants in her life with respect and love. She should behave like she would want to be treated. I told her I thought she already knew this, but it wasn't too late for her to learn and behave properly. I've since moved on and have started getting used to the single life. Being single isn't as bad as people make it seem. Today's third story. In this story, Opie reflects on his marriage to his ex-wife, feeling they married too young due to pressure. They wed after an unplanned pregnancy and faced challenges. Suspecting infidelity, he discreetly installed cameras and discovered evidence of her cheating. Confronted, she begged forgiveness, but he filed for divorce, gaining custody of their son. Despite her attempts to reconcile, the court ruled in his favor. He remains confused by her lingering affection, considering the betrayal and the opportunity she had to salvage their marriage. Now let's get into the story. I'm a 27-year-old man and my ex-wife is 23. Looking back on everything now, I believe we got married too young because we were pressured into it by my MIL. We got married when I was 23 and she was 18. We were in college when we met and started having intimate, which led to accidentally conceiving our child. So before I met her parents, she was carrying my baby. I felt so irresponsible and lost. She was a wonderful girl and seemed very bright and intelligent. I didn't want to leave her now, and I couldn't ask her to have an abortion. So a month after I met her parents, she told them what happened. They were shocked, but not as upset as I thought they'd be. Her mother immediately began planning the wedding and didn't let us have a say about it. After the simple and inexpensive wedding, we moved into our first 2-bedroom apartment. She dropped out of school, but I continued until I graduated with a business degree. By this time, our baby son was 1 year old. I quickly started a home business and with my parents' help, bought a house. At this time, I noticed that my wife would ignore me and stay distracted by her phone, laptop, or our son. One night, I made her a nice dinner and asked how she felt about things. She said she didn't feel attractive anymore since she had an after-baby belly. I told her she's the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen and that her belly only made me happier because she had my son. She didn't seem to believe me very much. We made love that night and it was very intimate and genuine. 2 weeks later, she was still distracted and avoiding conversation. I noticed she was buying things to help with her stomach. In our house, we only had 2 cameras, one in the nursery and one in my office. My wife didn't know about the one in my office. While I left the house one day to meet with a client, I got a notification on my phone. That motion was detected in the office. For some reason, I felt nauseous when I saw this notification. It was like I knew something was wrong. I watched the video to see my wife enter the room, sit on my office chair, and take very, very bad pictures of herself. I waited with little hope that she'd send me these pictures, but she didn't. I didn't know what to do because I didn't want her to know I had a camera set up. I hoped that I could catch her actually cheating on me in case I needed to divorce her. For the next 2 months, I didn't say anything about her pictures. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. And every time I looked at our son, I wondered who she showed herself to. It was painful. During the time I waited, I installed another hidden camera that watched the front door of the house. When I came home from another client meeting one day, my wife was especially happy to see me. This was odd. She paid me extra attention while we ate dinner together and avoided her phone altogether. I knew something was up immediately, and after she fell asleep, I checked the camera footage. I found the proof I needed. While I was out, she let a man I've never seen before into her house. She went into the living room with him out of sight from the camera. 20 minutes later, he walked but naked to the bathroom across the hall. I can't describe how disgusted, betrayed, and sick I felt. That feeling still hits me sometimes to this day. After I discovered the evidence, I wasted no time. While my wife slept, I packed her a week's worth of clothes and even gave her some money. When it was all ready, I woke her up and showed her the video. She was half asleep at first, but then her eyes were wide in panic. She immediately started to beg me for forgiveness and said that she didn't know what was wrong with her. She said she thought it would make her feel better. I asked if by it she meant cheating on me and sleeping with a man she hardly knew, and to that she was silent. I told her our son was staying with me and she was leaving. She sobbed and cried, but it wasn't about our son staying with me, only that she didn't want me to divorce her. After another hour of that, I convinced her that she messed up and needed to listen to me if there was any chance of patching things up. She finally left for her parents' house, and the next day I took my son with me while I filed for a divorce. I showed my lawyer the video I had, and I didn't have to pay her a damn thing. During the court hearings, she tried to get custody and child support, but it was determined that she didn't have adequate living space for a child. So I was awarded custody. Whenever I see her, she looks at me like she loves me, which confuses me because she had the opportunity to be my wife.